Hello and welcome to the channel of Hashalia. Once again, I trust that God is blessing you. And today is the 3rd of December 2024. So we're already well on our way into the last month of the year. I'd like to share a few things with you, which I believe is quite prophetic as to what is happening right now. And it's from the days of Habakkuk. Habakkuk was known as one of the minor prophets, and it's believed that he possibly prophesied round about the just before the Babylonian uh, exile, the time of Jeremiah. Some people believe even in the time of Ezekiel. But whatever, it's a small book, and I actually recommend that you read this entire book. It's only 3 chapters. It's really quite a fascinating book because the first 2 chapters is really just a dialogue between um, Habakkuk and God. And Habakkuk actually begins by complaining to God. You're going to see a lot of parallels um, between his time and what is happening right now. And I specifically want to look at 5 woes that Habakkuk pronounces, or God pronounces and uses Habakkuk to pronounce those woes. But let me just begin in Habakkuk chapter 1. Like I say, I'm only going to read a few verses, I'm not reading the whole book. So please follow along. It's a complete Jewish study Bible. Habakkuk chapter 1, verse 1. This is the prophecy which Habakkuk the prophet saw. Adonai, how long must I cry without your hearing? Violence I cry to you, but you don't save. Now, look at that straight away. He's obviously been crying out to God very regularly, crying out quite a lot. But it appears to Habakkuk that God is not responding to him. Verse 3. Why do you make me see wrongdoing? Why do you permit oppression? Pillage and cruelty confront me, so that strife and discord prevail. Therefore, Torah, or law, therefore Torah is not followed, justice never gets rendered, because the wicked fence in the righteous. This is why justice comes out perverted. So he's got all these complaints that he feels like he's being almost in a way forced to watch all this wickedness in his own in Judah, amongst his own people. He says, I'm crying out to you for justice, but you're not even listening to me. And these people are just getting worse and worse, and things are going from bad to worse. In verse 5, we get a response from God. Look around among the nations. What you see will completely astound you. So, in other words, God's going to sort of blow Habakkuk's mind with his response. For what is going to be done in your days, you will not believe, even when you are told. I am raising up the Kasdim, the Chaldeans, Nebuchadnezzar, that bitter and impetuous nation who march far and wide over the earth to seize homes that are not their own. So basically saying, right, I'm answering you, Habakkuk. You've been crying out to me. And now here is my answer. I'm going to raise up the Chaldeans against you, these absolutely wicked, evil, violent people, and they're going to come up against you and take you into captivity. You imagine how Habakkuk must have felt. Think about this. There's wickedness all round about him, and he's just so distressed. Jeremiah was exactly the same. Habakkuk's a righteous man, and he just wants to live a peaceful life. but he's called by God as a prophet. And God gives him this response. He must be sitting there thinking, look, okay, I see so much violence and wickedness. I'm kind of hoping, God, you're just going to judge the wicked in the land and then everything can become peaceful again. Because there's people like me, God, Habakkuk. There's people like Jeremiah and his scribe, Baruch. There's people like Ezekiel and Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. So there are some righteous people, although the vast majority are doing wicked things. But the response that Habakkuk gets is not maybe what he was expecting. I think he was expecting something a bit more pleasant. Didn't quite work out like that. But then we jump into Habakkuk chapter 2. See again, you know, we have, you could say, Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon, has invaded us, the entire world, over many, many years. In the oppression, the violence, the wickedness, and we're crying out and saying, how long is this going to go on? Well, I have got good news for you like that, because I don't believe God is saying to us at this moment that he's going to raise up the Chaldeans to come against us. I think he's going to say something quite the opposite to that, which is what he speaks to Habakkuk in chapter 2. We'll go straight to verse 2 in chapter 2. Then Adonai answered me and said, write down the vision clearly on tablets, so that even a runner can read it. For the vision is meant for its appointed time. It speaks of the end, and it does not lie. It may take a while, but wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. Now, I believe here in verse 3, there is not a wordplay, but there's multiple meanings to this. It says, it speaks of the end and it does not lie. This vision that Habakkuk has got to write down on tablets. Now, this is talking about, it speaks of the end. The end of what? The end of the Babylonian captivity. But as you've heard me before, prophecy is pattern and it repeats. And I think this also speaks of the end of time for our days. But in Habakkuk's day, it's speaking of the end of the Babylonian captivity. It says it might take a while, but wait for it. And it did take a while. It took 70 years. Well, how long have we been in this Babylonian system? I'll tell you something, brothers and sisters. It's a lot longer than 70 years. It may take a while, but wait for it. It will surely come. It will not delay. And I think we are now at that very specific place. It will not delay. Now we jump forward to verse 6. Now this is speaking about Nebuchadnezzar, although he never names him. Verse 6. Won't all these take up taunting him and say about him in mocking riddles, woe to him who amasses other people's wealth. How long must it go on? And to him who adds to himself the weight of goods taken in pledge. Woe to him who amasses other people's wealth. You know, for each one of these woes, I could probably speak for hours, but I'm going to be very brief because I don't want it to be a huge message. The world in which we are living, the wealth that you and I have amassed, and believe you me, it is much bigger than what you realise. But it's been stolen from us from birth. You've heard me talk about the birth certificates and being traded on the stock market and all this sort of stuff, but all the taxes as well. Many of the taxes are illegal. Illegal. You work hard. It's your blood, sweat, and tears that earns that money. And who comes along? Mr. Babylon. I'll have a nice big chunk of that, thank you very much. And then when you're left with what you've got, you go and buy food and you pay tax on that. You buy clothes, you pay tax on that. Tax, 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 tax. Very much like the book of Exodus when the Hebrews were under the control and were slaves to the Egyptian masters. Very much the same. But remember how Exodus turned out. They got all the gold and silver, all the wealth of the Egyptians. This is what's happening again. So, what to him who amasses other people's wealth? All these elites, let me tell you something, let me make it clear. It says right in the tablets and make it clear. I'll make this clear. All your wealth is sitting with them. But there's one who sits on a throne who's now got other ideas about bringing that back. Again, just let me be clear, I'm not a prosperity preacher. You've heard me say it many times. God is going to bless his people, and it will be those he can trust for the furtherance of the kingdom of God. Yes, the book of Revelation will be fulfilled, but there's things going to happen first, friends, and I believe some really good times. You just keep pressing into the Lord. You keep stuck in this word, and he will look after you. Verse 9. Woe to him who seeks unjust gain for his household, putting his nest on the heights in order to be safe from the reach of harm. Think about that. Seeks unjust gain for his household. These elites live in ivory towers, and they believe because they're surrounded by maybe miles and miles, acres and acres and hectares of land, and then they've got walls and they've got fences and they've got security cameras, or maybe they've even bought an island. Maybe they called it Epstein Island, and many others who bought islands. They've got this unjust gain for their household, putting their nest on the heights, somewhere safe, out of the way of harm, or so they think. And then in these places as well, they do the most despicable, evil, and wicked things that you can imagine, and nobody gets to see it, or so they think. But the eyes of the Lord roam to and fro throughout the earth, and he's going to repay each person for what they have done. Verse 12. Woe to him who builds a city with blood and founds a town on injustice. I'm sure quite a lot of you are familiar with the satanic markings when you look from a bird's eye view from high up, looking down at certain places like Washington, D.C., and places in London and the Vatican, and many, many other cities, towns, and villages around the world. A lot of these places were built on the back of blood. People had to die for this, and these places were built on injustice. I might have mentioned a few years ago I had a vision about the city of Wellington in New Zealand, and I had multiple visions on Wellington, but in one of them I was shown the entire history of Wellington from the very beginning, its foundation, right up until now. I gave a prophetic word about that. But God was showing me and telling me this city was built on blood and injustice. It was wicked right from the very beginning, and it just continued to get worse and worse and worse. But you see, friends, even though things take a long time, God in the end will act. He will act because he is just. He is the judge. Verse 15. Oh, this might speak to me. Woe to him who has his neighbour drink, adds his own poison, and makes him drunk in order to see him naked. Oh boy, did I know. Spend a lot of my time drunk. But when I was reading this, what I was thinking, see, woe to him who has his neighbour drink, adds his own poison, and makes him drunk. So he's getting in order to see him naked. So think drunkenness or even being drugged. The internet is awash, it's flooded with stories of people who were lured into this satanic cult from Hollywood, politicians, entertainment, business, you name it, from all walks of life. And they were slowly indoctrinated into this satanic Babylonian regime. And a lot of drink and drugs was flying about. And they were encouraged to get involved in more and more despicable acts. It maybe started off something light, but in the end, many people have been filmed, videoed, and bribed. They were filmed doing the most horrific things to children, even to the point of murdering them. And it was all filmed and it was used to bribe them. That's what this type of thing was happening back in the days of Habakkuk. It's happening today in our day. But remember, the judge is coming. In the final woe, woe to him who tells a piece of wood, wake up, or a speechless stone, rouse yourself. Can this thing teach? Why, it's covered with gold and silver without the slightest breath in it. Lots and lots and lots of sacrifices to these false gods. And ultimately, they can't do anything. But these people believe that these things they worship and sacrifice to can do many things for them. Idolatry, this is speaking about idols and idolatry. But it's very, very sinister when you get into the satanic side of things. So, what was happening in the days of Habakkuk is happening again. What God is saying to Habakkuk says, once my people have been judged for their wickedness, I'm going to set them free. And then I'm going to turn my attention to Nebuchadnezzar, the Chaldeans. I am going to deal with them. And you are going to be blessed because you're going to learn a lot of lessons in captivity, a lot of hard lessons. It finishes by saying in verse 20, but Adonai is in his holy temple, let all the earth be silent before him. I mentioned that verse recently. I believe that when God really moves big style, he's moving already and things are happening quicker and quicker. But I think we're going to reach a point where the whole earth will just go silent in total awe at what God has done. This is what's happening with us. We can argue and say, well, why did we have to go through all this? But, we had gone way off, astray in many, many ways. And whether we like it or not, God has allowed this to happen. But we are at the end of our Babylonian captivity. You see, Jeremiah prophesied this. Daniel was a wise man. He understood that it was coming to an end. You are a wise man or a wise woman. You understand this is coming to an end. And there are some really good times lying ahead, some incredible things that you and I are going to get to witness. So, friends, I look upon these 5 woes as something very, very encouraging. Don't forget, don't gloat about the downfall of the wicked. Pray for them. Pray for them. Don't gloat over them. Good times are coming, friends. And so I'm going to finish there, and may the Lord bless you. Until next time. Bye-bye.